Welcome to Behind the Barcode, the podcast that goes beyond the label to uncover the stories of the faces behind your favorite products. We're your hosts, Anna and Sydney.
In this podcast, we dive into the dynamic world of consumer packaged goods with a focus on better-for-you products. As entrepreneurs ourselves, we know firsthand the challenges and triumphs of bringing a product to market. That's why we're here to share the journeys of fellow innovators, industry experts, and entrepreneurs who are making waves in the CPG space.
Join us as we sit down with inspiring guests to explore the stories behind the UPC codes, uncovering the passion, perseverance, and purpose driving their businesses forward. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur, a budding startup, or simply curious about the stories behind the products you love, this podcast is for you.
So grab your favorite snack and get ready to go behind the barcode.
Hello, and welcome back to Behind the Barcode. Today, we're so excited to be chatting with Summer Stewart, the co-founder and CEO of Kamana, which is a roasted mesquite coffee alternative, first of its kind. We're so excited to just jump in and learn all about Kamana and Summer's story.
Amazing. Well, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here and obviously very much inspired by you two as founders. And yeah, this is my first podcast episode. So just really excited to dive in. Obviously, I'm Summer, co-founder and CEO of Kamana. And Kamana is a superfood coffee alternative made with 100% roasted mesquite pods. As you mentioned, we are not first of our kind, but first to the market here in the US with the mesquite coffee alternative. And a lot of people aren't familiar with mesquite. A lot of people think it might be like the wood from the barbecue, which it's not, but it's made from 100% roasted mesquite pods and is naturally caffeine and acid free. Looks, makes, and tastes very similar to coffee and gives you natural energy. And it is my absolute favorite thing.
Thank you for coming and being on the podcast.
Yeah.
I need to try this already
Yeah,
because
you haven't tried it yet.
I've heard so many good things and I have to try.
Okay, let's have a taste test.
Okay, cheers.
First
Taste test.
impression.
Cheers.
Wow.
What does it
Perfect
taste like?
temperature, first of all. Like that's beautiful.
Fella mugs are pretty nice.
That's really nice. It tastes very, very similar to coffee.
How would you compare it to coffee?
I would say it doesn't have what you just said, like that acid kick. Mm-hmm. It's softer and more, it gives more notes of cacao. Yeah. Is that, I don't know.
Yes.
How do you feel?
Yeah. I would say it's softer and it has like almost like a sweeter taste a little bit.
Like hot chocolate.
Like hot chocolate a little bit.
That's
like
really
hot
nice.
chocolate with coffee if they had a baby.
We say it's like a subtly sweet, smooth coffee with
really
notes
nice.
of cacao, cinnamon, and nutmeg.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm glad you like it.
What is a mesquite pod?
But mesquite is this ancient desert superfood. So it's a pod that grows on a tree in the desert.
Okay.
And it is, packed with fiber, adaptogens, protein, vitamins, and minerals. So it's an incredible superfood. And actually, I think, Anna, you're familiar with mesquite. Historically, in the US, it's been used
Talked to me about it.
as like a superfood powder that you put into oatmeal or smoothies. Some people use it as a gluten-free flour alternative. But there is a couple companies in South Africa, which is where I discovered mesquite, and I'll have to share more about that story, but found that when you roast and mill it and brew it, it looks, makes, and tastes very similar to coffee, but is naturally caffeine and acid-free.
Wow.
Yeah, so I first started using mesquite years ago. I was adding it to my smoothies in my vegan days because it added like a caramelly taste.
Okay.
So
Yes.
I discovered it, I think, through Sun Life or through my previous juice job.
Yeah.
I did that with maca.
With maca.
Yeah.
Yes.
But mesquite tastes better than maca.
Yeah.
Maca doesn't taste so
Maca
great.
doesn't taste
I had to make myself like the taste of maca, which my friend said the other day, and it kind of made me realize something. She's like, why did you make yourself like something? Like, why did you do that? And I was like, I don't know. Like, that's kind of like, she's not in the health and wellness space.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the difference. And I made myself like the taste of maca because I,
Knew the functional benefits.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like it was more trustworthy years ago when it had first released. And I feel like it's become so mainstream now that I'm like, I don't really know if the maca that I'm taking, like that I'm eating is really I feel like it's processed so much to get to that form in the bag. Anyway, I took maca for hormone imbalances years ago, but this tastes so much better than that.
Maca is very popular.
Yeah.
And actually, Peru is where we source our mesquite from. And Peru has one of the largest export businesses for superfoods, and maca is a big one of them.
Yes. So we went to Peru together, Anna and I. But I've never been to South Africa, and my dad is actually from South Africa.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
can you tell us about your experience having your first cup of roasted mesquite coffee in South Africa and what that was like?
Yeah, and maybe I can start with kind of the whole journey that led me there too.
Yeah.
So Kamana is a very personal story and business to me, or our founder story is one that's very personal to me. So for most of my 20s, I lived in New York City and was completely caught up in the hustle culture, climbing the corporate ladder, and caffeine was really what fueled me. I was like a 7 or 8 cups a day kind of person. It was actually pretty crazy, but ended up kind of having a quarter life crisis, I guess you could call it, back in 2020, and ended up leaving my fast-paced life behind in search for more purpose personally and professionally. And I ended up kind of traveling the world on this eat, pray, love journey and slowing down and healing and reconnecting to my body. Yeah. And in doing that, realized that caffeine, this thing that I'd been consuming every single day, was actually really hurting me when I was at the root of a lot of the stress, anxiety, gut issues, hormonal imbalances, and poor sleep that I had been struggling with for years. So I tried to cut it out, but I struggled because matcha, mushroom coffee, and tea, they just like really didn't do it for me. They didn't give me the flavor and the ritual that I so loved about coffee. Mm-hmm. So I was drinking decaf, not knowing at the time that it is not always 100% caffeine free and oftentimes full of chemicals. But it was just like the best alternative that I could find. And anyway, fast forward, I ended up in Cape Town. I was living there at the time. And I ordered a decaf coffee at one of the coffee shops there. And I was like, oh my God, this is the best cup of coffee I've ever had. This is amazing. It's kind of like a little sweeter, has notes of like cacao, cinnamon, nutmeg, kind of nutty. I loved it. I remember taking an Instagram and saying like, I found the best cup of coffee in the world at Canela Cafe in Cape Town. Yeah. And anyway, like many cups later, I was talking to the barista and learned that I wasn't actually drinking decaf. I was drinking Mesquite, which is what they sell in South Africa as a healthier decaf coffee. So that was my first experience with Mesquite. I actually thought I was drinking coffee or decaf, and I had completely fallen in love with it. It was literally my favorite cup of coffee in the world.
Wow.
My favorite cup of coffee.
How cool.
Yeah.
Huh. I would have, I mean, that's so interesting. And you know exactly the coffee shop that it was. Like you just said the name. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a very fun discovery.
Yes. How long were you there for in Cape Town?
I lived there about 4 months. And it was actually once I discovered Mesquite and really decided that I wanted to turn it into a business that I knew that I needed to come back to the US and really plant myself and focused on building my company.
Cool.
So what was that shift like when you decided, oh, I want to turn this into a business?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I kind of had this quarter life crisis when I was living in New York City. I was like 26 and had kind of like checked all the boxes that I thought would make me happy. And I was just like wildly unfulfilled and really realized that what I was just doing was not aligned to my purpose. And I always knew I wanted to start my own company too. And I was like kind of killing myself for someone else's dreams. When I left, I knew that I wanted to eventually do my own thing. And I was actually spending a lot of my time traveling, exploring different ideas and opportunities. I had like probably 10 different ideas before I landed on Mesquite. So discovered Mesquite and fell in love with it. And I was like, okay, what an amazing opportunity to, be first to market in the US with Mesquite coffee. There were 2 companies in South Africa doing it at the time, which were the companies that inspired me, but no one really doing it in the US in a big way, no one else globally. So I thought, what an amazing opportunity to be first to market, create a new category and like a booming coffee alternative and decaf industry. But I really was on a mission to prove that business is our greatest force for doing good in the world. I really wanted to align business and impact. So I was looking for a triple bottom line business opportunity. And I kind of paused with Mesquite because I was like, okay, how am I going to make a difference? How am I going to make an impact? And, providing consumers with a healthier alternative to, decaf or coffee could help consumers. But like, how am I going to make a positive impact to like communities and to the planet? And actually did more research, on Mesquite and learned that there is actually incredible both social and environmental impact opportunity with the mesquite tree. And that's when Kamana was immediately born.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. And it goes deeper than just the product and helping other people too. And do you talk about your whole caffeine journey like on social media and why you made the switch and all those things? Like because I resonate with the matcha mushroom coffee thing.
Yeah.
It just doesn't do it for me. It's not the same. It's not the same like rich, bold taste I love with coffee. So I really resonate. I know you like matcha too, and I do drink it, but
I like it with a bunch of maple syrup.
Yeah.
Or honey.
So no, I resonate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, obviously, I think there's a really big trend that we're seeing with founders really being the face of their brands. And I think both of you do such an incredible job with that. You know, you share your story of, finding sea moss and, you similarly with French Squirrel. And I think we're really, trying to do a lot of the same at Kamana and have really loved being able to share my own personal story with caffeine and have found that, and which is what I believed and why I was so excited to build Kamana, that I'm not alone. There are so many people who, were previously kind of unconsciously addicted to caffeine and didn't really realize that it was at the root of a lot of these, health issues that they were experiencing. Not only, educating people about Mesquite, but also, helping people become more conscious about their relationship to caffeine has been something that we're really passionate about doing at Kamana.
And you said you're a co-founder, so you have...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, my co-founder, Kristen, is amazing. Okay. We were actually business partners at our previous startup. Oh, nice. We have a very similar background. We both started our career in big tech, actually at the same company, but we didn't know each other at the time.
Okay.
Like big tech, corporate, knew I wanted to start my own company, but wanted to learn what it was like to build something from the ground up. So actually left and joined a super early stage retail tech startup as the first business hire and was leading sales, helped them scale the team, and then needed to hire a head of customer success and was introduced to my co-founder now, Kristen, through a previous mentor that we shared. So she joined our last startup as second business hire and head of customer success. And we spent a year and a half, almost 2 years really building that company. Actually at similar times ended up just deciding that it wasn't aligned to the purpose and the impact that we wanted to make and left the company. And we're kind of on separate journeys. And I knew I wanted to work with her again. I knew that I wanted to start my own company. And I knew I wanted her to be my co-founder. And I came to her with all the ideas. And Mesquite was the one that she was finally like, okay, yes, I will do this with you.
I love that so much. Yeah. And also I found my co-founder at my previous job too, which you just never know. Like it could just be this job that you just worked, but you never know where it's actually going to take you.
It's incredible. And I just so believe that the universe is guiding us in so many ways that we might even not see or understand in the moment. And it is like no coincidence that Kristen and I ended up, working together, having these shared mentors, leaving at similar times, and now working together. But yeah, she's amazing. Couldn't be doing it without her.
So it's interesting because a little bit of a shift in gears for a second, because the last few days that we've been recording, we have had CPG founders who have been importing raw ingredients or raw produce from foreign countries. What is that like, and operationally importing and like relationships with farmers or whoever it is to get it to the US, and like what are the complications, challenges, benefits?
Yeah. So I wish Kristen was here to talk about this because that is totally her wheelhouse.
Okay. Share whatever you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's been a pattern the last couple of episodes.
I'm certainly happy to share, but it's been, amazing. Kristen and I, this is our first time being in, consumer and in food and bev. Neither of us knew anything about import customs or, FDA regulations. I've just been so impressed with how quickly she's been able to, really learn all the ropes. But yeah, it's been challenging with Mesquite. One, because there's no one else in the world doing Mesquite coffee other than these two companies in South Africa. So just like finding a supplier in the first place was challenging. And we, ended up realizing that Peru was actually one of the only supply markets in the world for Mesquite. So we had to find, just a Mesquite supplier, but none of them were familiar with Mesquite coffee. So had to really work with them on the whole kind of product development process, which was really...
Okay, so it's more than just Mesquite. It's Mesquite coffee.
Yeah, so it's very
it's very
different than the
Okay.
mesquite that Anna is familiar with.
Okay.
The raw
So-
mesquite
Got
powder
it.
is what I was using.
Okay.
So the raw mesquite powder, which has been used previously, is just like raw, dried, and milled to like a really fine powder.
Okay.
Our mesquite coffee is roasted, which is what brings out that really like coffee-like flavor, and then ground into grounds that you literally brew just like coffee. So again, we had to find a mesquite supplier, which there are many in Peru, but then find one that was willing to collaborate with us on the product development of mesquite coffee and create a whole new product.
Got it. Okay,
That
beautiful.
was a challenge, certainly. And also what's really interesting about, again, just like not only US import regulations, but also like export regulations in foreign countries. So mesquite is, I mentioned, has a potential to make a really positive impact on our planet. It's actually an incredible candidate for carbon sequestration. And can really help to sequester carbon and help to make a positive impact on our global carbon crisis. So because of that, it's actually a protected species in Peru. So there is an organization called CERFOR, which is like solely responsible on just kind of maintaining mesquite in Peru and really restoring a lot of the mesquite that was lost. And so not only do we have to go through normal like Peruvian export customs, but we also have to go through this like whole other CERFOR process, which has been really interesting.
Wow.
And additionally too, because mesquite coffee isn't on their like standard export list, it's been really interesting to get it out of the country in a form that they're not familiar with, and then imported again here in the US in a form that they're not familiar with either. But luckily we haven't had too many snags yet.
Okay, good. I bring this up just because a lot of our listeners are people who want to start businesses or are in the process of it or have small businesses. And I think that a lot of people just see social media and the marketing side of it. And it's like, how many forms you have to fill out just to get anything done. And I think if you were to ask me my least favorite part of running French Squirrel, it's probably that.
All the paperwork.
It's all the paperwork.
Also, like figuring out what the regulations are.
Yeah.
Everything that you're required to do. And I had previously spoken to you about that you're like currently doing your co-packing in Peru.
So I was just going to ask that.
So what are the challenges that you're currently facing with that? And then are you going to continue?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's bagged all in Peru.
So previously, we're actually, as you mentioned, making a switch now. So our goal with Mesquite, because we were first to market, was really just to like get to market as quickly as possible and start selling. So our goal was to like have as short of a supply chain as possible, at least for our first production run, which is why we decided to not only have our mesquite producer who's actually like finishing, like sourcing the raw materials, finishing the product, actually package it as well. But they are not co-packers and they did not have very advanced co-packing capabilities. So with our first production run, we actually had quite a few damaged products just because of the damage of the actual packaging. But it was a way that we could, again, just very quickly in a without having to have too many hands involved, get product to the US to start selling. That being said, as we are looking to improve quality at scale, we are moving co-packing here to the US. So today, now, our supplier in Peru is doing all the sourcing, the roasting, milling it, and selling it to us or shipping it to us bulk. And then we're co-packing it here in the US.
Okay, wow.
Congrats. I know
that's huge.
how much work goes into actually figuring out all of that. And I mean, it's stressful.
That's the number one thing I think in this business is finding the right partner, the right co-packing partner, like the number one thing.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think not only finding the right co-packing partner, but we wouldn't know anything today if it weren't for all the people who helped us along the way, made introductions, educated us about all the rules and regulations. I would just say that, the people that you meet or the people that you get in front of just really change the trajectory of your business.
When you said that, it made me think of, I don't know if I've even told you this story, Anna, but when I was in college, it was my senior year at UC Santa Barbara, and I knew I wanted to start a business eventually, and I got in contact with this food scientist who's still my food scientist today. Shout out Victor Hong. I want him to come on the podcast.
I've met him at
Expo.
at Expo. Sweet
guy. Sweet man. And I got connected with him I think I just sent him a cold email. and he works in the Bay Area. And I just said, hey, I'm looking to start my own business. I would love like to, have a few minutes of your time on a phone call. And he so graciously took 30 minutes of his time, and then, subsequent hours too. I didn't pay him a single thing.
It's amazing.
He just wanted to help me. He's like, you're young, I want to help you. He taught me so much. So then I gained the knowledge to then go to the next co-packer and be like, okay, well, the moisture level of this, and then I got to test the mold level of this. And I was learning all these things that I didn't know. And he is an integral part of French Squirrel.
Yeah.
And then he came and he saw me at Expo West and met Anna
Full circle.
at the trade show 4 years later,
Wow.
5 years later. And that's just because he so graciously helped me, and that's part of the reason I'm here.
That's amazing.
And I was sitting in the U Center, it was called, at UC Santa Barbara, the University Center. And I was just sitting with my headphones and taking a call, and he didn't charge me anything.
It's incredible.
Didn't charge me anything. And now I actually work with him, and we work together. But that's all I'm saying. It was just, that made me think of that.
Yeah. On a separate note, not so related to the food side of things.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, starting a business, not only from the food and FDA regulation side of things, but also just the legal and the tax and the business formation side of things is really challenging. And
no one talks about that either.
No one talks about that. And also just, do you do an LLC? Do you do a C Corp? What are the benefits or challenges of both? And we were really lucky to find a man, John, who also just totally took us under his wing, didn't charge us a thing. And he's an amazing lawyer.
Wow.
And really helped us with our whole business formation and introduced us to so many tax people, accounting people. And to this day hasn't charged us a thing, but said, I have a much better, or he said, I have a vested interest in this because I'll make a lot more money if I can help you get to the next stage.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's those people that in the future they know too.
They see your vision for where you're going. And obviously it's because they got a good feeling from you.
Exactly.
So did you bootstrap Kamana? How does fundraising look like for you?
Yeah. So we did not bootstrap. And as much as I really admire people like you who have been able to bootstrap and really grow your business organically and maintain ownership, neither Kristen nor I were in a position to really launch the business without taking on investors. And I also knew that I didn't want to work on Kamana on the side of a full-time job. We actually tried doing it for a couple months while we were working on another idea, believe it or not. And I just became so passionate about Mesquite and Kamana and knew that I just wanted to be able to put all of my effort, 110% of my focus into building this business and making my vision a reality. We actually ended up investing each individually about $10K into the business, which that just got us our first PO, which is a very small PO, and our first payment to our branding agency. And then we did end up raising a $500K pre-seed from friends, families, and angels. And that was really important to us too, to make sure that we had the capital that we needed to also move quickly, because we were first to market in the US with Mesquite coffee, and we knew how much education it would take.
Yeah.
We didn't want to run the risk of other people not moving it fast enough and other people entering the market and us losing, that potential leadership position in the category.
Especially because you're creating a whole new category. And I think it's really important to even talk about the fundraising aspect of it. I mean, I was working a full-time job for about a year and a half while
amazing.
Starting Akasha,
Yeah.
but it was insanely stressful, and so is my co-founder. Until I was even able to pay myself, and the first payment was $200 a month. Plus I live at home, so a lot of people just see social media and they don't actually see the full story, and so they assume oh, they must have so much money because they're doing this full time, but they don't actually see the full picture of
All
it.
the sacrifices that you're making.
It costs so much money to start a company, and to build one.
So I really appreciate you're the first person who's actually said a number about how much money you put in the business.
Yeah.
I don't even mind sharing this on the podcast because I think that's one of the most frequent questions that I get asked from other founders. They literally, it's this hush hush thing that no one actually knows how much money you need to start a company.
Yeah.
And in the CPG space, it's different than any other space. So I can only speak to that. I also put in about that much money. That was the number, like around there, give or take. And I lost a huge part of that with a big mistake that I made
in the early days.
In the early days, where I had, where I hired this company that was going to do an R&D for French Squirrel. And I was going to do these protein bars. They tasted horrible. I hated it. It was horrible. I remember crying. And you know, my dad has taught me a great word, that there's such thing as learning money. That was learning money. Because I would never do something like that again. And from then on, that like taught me, okay, what's going on here? I learned the business, but that is what people want to know. How much does it take? And I personally am bootstrapped still, but that is what that's what it took to get to market. So I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. I think that's why people are listening to our podcast.
But if you are fundraising, which again, like bootstrapping is amazing, but it is so challenging. And the fact that you guys are doing it is incredible. But I think, I mean, that's why investors exist, to really help people get started with their businesses without having to invest their whole personal savings into a business.
I really like this. I'm like drinking it more and more.
Oh, I love it.
It's really so grounding.
I love it.
Yeah.
It makes
Sorry
me so
to
happy.
interrupt.
No, it's okay. You can always interrupt for a Kamana review.
No. It's really nice. It's really nice. As you drink it more, you like it more.
It's like coffee. I mean, like imagine like your first sip of coffee, you weren't like, oh my God, this is the best tasting thing ever. No. It's definitely like, unless you are a coffee lover and like you're familiar with like the flavors of coffee, it is also similar. Like it can be an acquired taste. But yeah, I was saying with fundraising, like that is an option. And I think, you know, it can be scary to give up, you know, which I'll just share again, transparently. We raised at a $5 million pre-money valuation cap. So we gave up about 10% of our company. But while that's scary to give up ownership of your company, I knew that like we wouldn't be able to get as far as we have now without taking on investors, because I would have been having to work, you know, a full-time job on the side. And, you know,
we both were.
Totally. Exactly. Which is amazing. But it was just like, it's a cost.
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
No, I was just going to say, and I think what's just been, you know, so awesome to realize too, is that while, you know, we are giving up part of our company as we're fundraising, it's really just like bringing more people into the mission and to the larger vision, and really helping this thing to become much larger than it could ever be just on our own. So fundraising has been really challenging. I'm sure you guys know it's a really, you know, tough market. We actually started fundraising in August of 2023, and we just closed our round about like 3 weeks ago, which has been amazing, or was amazing to finally close it. But yeah, the market's tough right now.
Yeah. I was just on the phone with our fractional CFO for French Squirrel, and she was talking to me. We were discussing. She even posted this on her story. That's how like powerful of a conversation it was. It's about the idea of debt tolerance, okay? And this is what I think people need to hear if you're about to start a CPG business, because I have had to borrow money, and it's impossible not to keep it going, because the cash flow is what's the problem in the CPG space. It's not about sometimes the profit margin. It's that you need to be 50% above cash flow positive in order to make a second unit of your product. So I'm learning this now. So it means like if you're below 50%, then you don't have enough to make another unit. And you can't just sell and then be sold out. You have to sell and then at the same time make it so that you're not sold out, but you sometimes don't have the cash to make the inventory. So I'm learning about this idea of debt tolerance, right? And I would say my advice is, and what I hear you saying too, is like, I have to raise my prices for French Squirrel because I have a low debt tolerance. I don't like owing people money. I don't like that feeling. And it's just a personal thing. It's a Sydney thing. It actually has nothing to do with French Squirrel. And it was making me insane, because I don't like that feeling. So now that it's bootstrapped, I'm like, okay, well, I haven't taken on investors. I have to raise my prices, or then eventually get to the point where I do take on investors because my debt tolerance is low. If it was high, no problem. I could keep going because I know that the company is successful. It's just that the CPG space is creating a lot of cash flow issues.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any commentary on that. Did I make any sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like especially at retail,
Yes.
it's especially hard.
Yes.
Totally.
Because then you're also waiting for that check for 30, 60, 90 days.
And it's usually late.
It's usually late.
Yeah.
There's always fees of some kind.
Yes.
Yeah.
And plus you have to be producing more
Yeah.
product in the meantime. Plus
Yeah.
there's free fills, deductions.
Yes. So no, and what
promos.
you said, it's like, again, it's about the founder, because when I wasn't getting, I still have so many checks that are unpaid, and there are people that could just be like, it's okay, it's fine, but inside, I get nervous, and so it depends on your own debt tolerance. Like if you are a calm individual, and I try to act like I'm calm, and I am, but on the inside, I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay, at times.
Yeah.
And when I'm not, and I don't get the check, I get nervous. And some people, as my fractional CFO said, are like, oh, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
It's okay. I can just pay myself back, or I can pay the line of credit back. No problem, no worries. So it depends on your own debt tolerance.
Well, I agree
Yeah.
with that, but I've heard from many, very experienced CPG founders,
Yeah.
investors, financial leaders, that successful CPG businesses or any products business that requires physical inventory, the success of the business relies on your ability to manage cash and inventory.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. And so I think you might have, personal struggles with that, but you're not alone. That's the struggle for every single business. It's
I know.
how you're constantly managing
Like how
cash
much
versus inventory.
How much do you have in inventory? Well, I have a lot in inventory, meaning that I haven't sold it yet. And also, I guess we're talking about all of this, which I love, because I don't think we've talked about this on the podcast yet, like this like deep finance work. I also, when you're tracking inventory, I was misguided a few months ago by someone in the finance space, like someone who was in the finance space, and I'll just leave it at that you track inventory times what you sell it at, but to track your inventory cost, it's what your product cost is times inventory. So I was being misguided and multiplying the amount of cases that I had in inventory by what I sell it for. It's not what you sell it for. It's your cost. And that's something that I just had to share, because I believe that person was misguiding a lot of other brands, and that's what the point of this podcast is.
I mean, tracking inventory is really challenging.
Really challenging.
Like we were like manually doing it.
So
and then
challenging.
we were going to use Katana, which is an inventory tracking platform.
Do you use a platform now?
Now we're going to be doing it through ShipStation, and our fractional CFO is helping us.
I heard you can do it through ShipStation.
Yes. So
It's actually
Wow.
funny. So mine and Kristen's previous startup was actually an inventory planning software.
Oh my God.
So literally,
I hear those words and I'm like, oy, and I want to like fall backwards. Yeah.
But it's just fascinating how much insight that we truly had into that part of the business prior to starting our own, just truly around how important planning inventory is. And it's this constant battle of like making sure that you have the right place, or the right products at the right place at the right time at the right price. And it is like it's science. It's an art and it's a science, but it's products company's like biggest challenge most often.
and then planning for spikes of virality too.
There's no way.
Oh my goodness. You like gain all this momentum, and then all of a sudden you're sold out for like a month. And
That's
then
a
you
good
have to gain the
problem, though.
momentum again.
Yeah.
That's been our biggest struggle this whole year, is like we're about to be sold out of everything on our website.
Oh my God. It's
Wow.
amazing.
Which is crazy. But then it's like without sales, the company like can't keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, how do you plan for these like spikes of virality, especially when you're working with creators or trying new marketing strategies? Like one thing could pop and then all of a sudden you're sold out the next morning, which is obviously a blessing. But it's like when you have that, you want to keep it going and keep the momentum.
And so you
ride the
need
wave.
the cash to
You
have
need-
the inventory.
Yeah, you need like a safety cushion.
Yes.
And we don't have like a safety cushion
No.
of inventory yet, which like most companies, I mean, bigger companies do,
Yeah.
but most small businesses
Don't.
don't. Like, I'm sure you're not sitting on a bunch of safety inventory.
No.
Yeah.
No, and I like what you said about science and art because that touches on the intuition part of inventory.
Totally.
Intuition, inventory. It goes so hand in hand. You could be the most analytical person, but if you don't, like, people ask, how do you know to place an order for 5,000 and not 7,000 or 2,000 versus 4? How do you know?
Yeah.
It's a feeling sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not even just a logical, oh, well, we have X amount of accounts and da-da-da. You have to plan for growth.
Yeah.
You can't, if you just keep stagnant, then you're creating that ceiling already. If you're like, oh, well, this is the amount and we're not going to grow. That's impossible.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think intuition is undervalued across all aspects of the business. I mean, I come from B2B tech, so everything is about like data-driven decisions.
Yeah.
And I think not only with inventory, but also just marketing and strategy and, you know, working with consumers, having a really strong intuition for what your customers are looking for and how to, you know, provide them a solution and position it in a certain way is so important, because data can only tell you so much, and no one's going to know your business or your product or your consumer better than you. So I think what's been really interesting for me since, you know, being a first-time founder and starting Kamana is really learning to lean on my intuition and trust it more than I've been taught to previously.
Yes. The data sometimes isn't accurate. I agree. You have to go with your gut.
I love that. What marketing strategies are you guys currently using, and what do you find that's working for you guys? Because I'm seeing Kamana everywhere.
Yeah, I'm seeing on my feed.
Thank you.
Too. Love the green also. This
Obsessed.
is the color of the year.
Thank you. Yeah, we love the green.
Of
Heart
Behind the
chakra,
Barcode.
Behind the Barcode, money, nature, and Kamana.
Yes.
I love it. Well, yeah, so we launched to the public almost 6 months ago now. And because we were first to market in the US with Mesquite coffee, our goal was really to just like get to market and prove product market fit, early signs of traction as quickly as possible. So we didn't really like launch with any marketing strategies. And the last 5-6 months has been just a lot of learning and testing and figuring out what are the, you know, right marketing strategies, the positioning, the messaging that's going to really, you know, resonate with consumers, help people understand what is Mesquite, compel them to try it. And it's been a lot of trial and error, lots of learnings, lots of challenges and failures. But in June was when we actually launched like our first real marketing campaign, which was super exciting. And that was a combination of a content strategy that is pushed across paid and organic social, influencer and affiliate or ambassador, and then a lot of in-person events. I think, you know, with any food business, it's just very important for consumers to be able to try the product. But I think especially with Mesquite, because people have no idea what it is, and there's just a lot of like discernment in the industry around coffee alternatives, with, you know, lots of them claiming to taste like coffee and then actually just tasting like dirt. It's just very, very important that we get in front of consumers and really get them to try Kamana in person. But obviously, as an e-commerce brand and as a, you know, 2.5 person team, sampling at scale is challenging. So actually one thing that we're really leaning into now, which is actually inspired by you, is like really trying to leverage like TikTok and really just leveraging affiliates and creators and our community to help us share our story in a bigger way, you know, show them trying the product, like sharing their own honest review. To really be able to kind of scale the education and even like the kind of, not necessarily the trial experience, but at least you being able to see the trial experience in a bigger way.
Yeah, I've seen influencers that have posted it already. Like it's on my feed. So you're doing something right.
Thank you.
You are, yeah. And I as a new ingredient to enter the space, I know how much education goes behind it.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
you kind of sometimes feel like a broken record, like you're just repeating yourself over and over again, what it is, what the benefits are, and everything. So all I can say is like just keep doing that, because people will still ask. Like, it might be all over your Instagram feed and you'll still receive a DM saying, wait, what is this?
Oh, for sure. The funniest one is that our biggest challenge with consumer education is actually the preparation. So people have no idea what it's supposed to taste like. They have no idea how to prepare it. And like as an e-com brand, sending product home to people and relying on them to make it is scary. And we provide as much education as we can, like with pamphlets and, on our socials and on our website, but consumers just don't listen. I'm sure that you have experienced that before. Yeah. But the funniest experiences are when people will literally just like pour mesquite grounds into water because they're so used to drinking mushroom coffee, which would literally be like drinking coffee ground water. Like it's just, it's not good, obviously.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, just so many challenges with consumer education. But yeah, it's a journey.
And then we've also had conversations like about like where you stand in the space kind of, because you're a coffee alternative, but you also want to be friends with coffee. And then there's also methylene chloride in, decaf coffee, which is toxic. It's a paint stripper. Yeah. It's used in a paint stripper. It's a chemical. So like, where do you stand, or like what ideas do you have
in terms of kind of positioning in the market?
Yeah. Positioning yourself. Yeah.
Like speaking on the methylene chloride, because maybe not a lot of people are familiar with that, which I think is scary. There's a couple ways that you can make decaf coffee. The first is the Swiss water method, which is a water filtration process and is very clean and safe. The second is the use of methylene chloride, which is literally a solvent or a chemical that actually like just strips the coffee beans of caffeine, exactly like it strips paint or like cleans commercial machinery. And what's really crazy is, this chemical has been proven to cause lots of forms of cancer, liver issues, even death. And the EPA has actually banned it for many uses, but the FDA still allows the use of methylene chloride in many decaf coffees. And they're not even required to share on the label whether or not it was a Swiss water or the chemical process. This is only decaf. Okay. Yeah.
You know what's weird? I've never wanted to drink decaf coffee. Like I have a resistance to it intuitively. I don't know if you experience that. It's like I'm either drinking coffee or I'm drinking something else.
Yeah,
like,
it feels unnatural.
It feels, something about it is weird. I've always thought like, how is that actually made? Like it's kind of it's like when you're, that's why I stopped eating fat-free yogurt, 0% low fat. I'm like, that's not natural. They're doing something to the yogurt.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a pause, but I've intuitively always I never wanted it. Now it makes sense.
I think it's interesting. There's people who just intuitively don't want it because they don't think it's natural, but I think it's interesting. There's a lot of kind of cultural trends around just decaf being for losers and low vibe. You might as well just drink the real thing. So we're really excited. And this whole issue with consumers not being able to find healthy decaf coffees is actually even recently this year, which is when we've seen a lot more conversation happening about decaf, because actually there's a lot of consumer health advocacy groups that are petitioning against the FDA or petitioning the FDA to ban the use of methylene chloride in decaf. So there's just lots of conversations happening right now, which we're really jumping on these conversations because with Kamana and Mesquite, we can provide a healthier decaf coffee with a alternative that is made from a single superfood ingredient that is naturally caffeine free and still really mimics the flavor and ritual of coffee.
So would you plan to have this in coffee shops too? And are you starting that portion of the business also?
So when I shared my story, I mentioned that my first experience with Mesquite was in a coffee shop. Yeah. And additionally, we really look up to, well, they're a little bit controversial now, but a company like, Oatly, who really brought oat milk to the U.S. market by partnering with coffee shops and cafes and baristas to really drive the education, awareness, and adoption of oat milk in the U.S.
Which they did a good job.
They did a great job. Yeah. And I think they were really the first mover. They were really what, brought oat milk to the U.S. market in a big way. But so food service and coffee shops and cafes, for both of those reasons, has always been kind of our North Star. And also, with creating a new category, our goal is to really be anywhere you can find coffee or matcha on a menu, on a shelf, we want you to be able to find Mesquite. And because I found it at a coffee shop in Cape Town and it's proven to work there, I think we thought that it'd be easier. I underestimated how challenging that would be to get into coffee shops.
Really hard to break through that barrier.
Well, and I think the same issue that we're having with consumer education, we're obviously having with our B2B clients as well.
Would it be, just theoretically, would it be as you had ordered it in South Africa as, I'm going to get a decaf coffee and it's or it's Mesquite on the menu?
The goal is it is Mesquite on the menu.
Okay.
And our goal is, again, really to create a category for Mesquite, just like matcha or mushroom coffee. And so I think what's been challenging in the early days with when consumers don't have any education around what Mesquite is, it's hard for us to help them understand what it is and compel them to try it without comparing it to coffee or positioning it as a coffee alternative, or, for me personally, sharing my journey with the negative side effects of caffeine.
Yeah.
But our goal is that with enough consumer education and awareness, Mesquite can stand on its own, and we don't have to be a coffee alternative. We can just be Mesquite, just like how matcha isn't a coffee alternative. It's just matcha.
Yeah.
But we're just not there yet. And so with coffee shops, I think one of the biggest mistakes that we made was not getting clear from the beginning on our ICP, our customer acquisition, and our messaging strategy for B2C versus B2B, which obviously, as you can imagine, they're very different. I remember I sent a pitch deck that I had made for fundraising to a coffee shop owner. I forget even why, but the headline was Mesquite is a coffee alternative that looks, makes, and tastes like coffee, but better. And he was frankly, I would never sell anything in my coffee shop that's claiming to be better than coffee. And I was oh yeah, shoot, rightfully so.
Yeah.
So we've had to really rethink who is our kind of pioneer or our innovator in that customer adoption curve when we're looking at our B2B clients versus our B2C clients. And figure out, what is kind of the messaging strategy. But our goal is that eventually, just like matcha, there's enough consumer demand that, customers or coffee shops will be, excited to offer their consumers another alternative in a coffee shop, especially for those who, can't drink coffee or are trying to cut back, but still really love the flavor and ritual and don't want to drink decaf.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, I like that. I see it. I visualize what you're visualizing. I do.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I would want to go into a coffee shop and order this, especially because I don't have any type of coffee maker at home.
Yeah.
And it would it would be nice to have it the way it's supposed to be had.
Totally.
For your first experience, which I totally understand.
That's actually one of our biggest challenges, as I mentioned, is preparation. Coffee shops are not only a really great discovery channel for us, but also can really help control that first experience people have with Mesquite and make sure that it's, prepared in the way that actually looks, makes, and tastes like coffee. And we've actually started exploring ready to drink as well to be able to control that first experience, but it's a whole nother ball game. So we'll see.
No. I visualize the letters on the menu where they put in the physical little tiny things.
Me too. Every day.
And under matcha it says Mesquite.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
It's just
not on the board, the little tiny.
And I think you mentioned too, you've just never thought to order decaf coffee. I think just walking into a coffee shop, you just saying, can I have a decaf versus can I have a Mesquite? It's just more interesting. It's just newer. Cool. It's more exciting. So yeah, we're really trying to, when again, talking to consumers and coffee shops, really not be competitive to coffee, maybe to decaf, but really hope that we can just live in harmony.
I think it could be kind of cool to do some kind of partnership with La La Land. I know that they do different activations with different brands where they have a drink available only through the weekend or something. That could be a good way to get the name out there.
I didn't know that La La Land did that actually, that's what we've started doing with coffee shops is doing pop-ups. And we've been able to do it. I'm lucky. I have a couple of friends who own coffee shops and have kind of been patient with me as I've been working out my positioning and my messaging.
Yeah.
But, we've done a couple of pop-ups and we just kind of serve Mesquite on the menu just for a day. And the very natural kind of in is when someone orders a decaf, they just say, oh, would you like to try Kamana or Mesquite instead. It's kind of like this new healthy alternative that's similar to decaf, but doesn't have the chemicals. Coffee shops don't say that, but
No. Yeah.
yeah, but I love that. I'll have to look into La La Land.
So where can listeners find you and Kamana, all the social handles you want to share, website, etc.?
Yeah, so right now we are only online, but you can find us at kamana.co, and then definitely follow both our socials on Instagram and TikTok at Drink Kamana.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Summer.
Thank you so much for coming
having
on.
me.
Yes. Thank you for tuning in to Behind the Barcode. We hope you enjoyed diving into the stories behind the products that fill your shelves. If you enjoyed listening, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast on your favorite listening platform.
Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. You can find everything linked in the show notes. And if you have a story to share or know someone who does, we'd love to hear from you.
Keep innovating, inspiring, and being curious about